Good morning, everyone. I am very, very happy to be here to be able to provide an update on the emotional literacy programs that are in place, not only in the government schools, but also in some of our private schools. I think this is a great place to start to really establish why is it that we even invest the way we have in emotional literacy programs, right? So we'll see there, if a child doesn't know how to read, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to swim, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to multiply, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to drive, or a young person doesn't know how to drive, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to behave, we teach, punish. I think historically, maybe we would have struggled to really respond to that last one. And I think it's important to note, especially in the business of education, we cannot assume that any of our students are coming to us having any of these social emotional skills that we're going to be talking about. Our students come from such a diverse background with many different types of experiences that maybe we can't even fathom. So we cannot make an assumption that children are coming to us with social emotional skills that they need in order to be able to be successful academically. So what do? We need to teach those skills as well. You'll see statistics quoted all through today, but what we know for sure is that many of our children and young people are likely to experience some kind of mental health difficulty, whether it meets the threshold of a disorder or not, that's left to be determined. But they will have mental health difficulties, many of them, excuse me. The statistic quoted there is 1 in 10. And we do also know that many of the mental health disorders that people will experience, up to half of those will present by age 14. Age 14, that's pretty young. But we do know in that sort of adolescent phase is when there's so many changes in the body and, hormonal changes, all kinds of changes, and that's often when we'll see the onset of mental health disorders or mental illness. So people in education or not in education, you might say, but okay, schools. Schools are not responsible for mental health. Schools are not responsible for health in general. But so why are we even talking about this? Well, if you're in the business of education, you would know or come to understand that we need our students to have a strong foundation in social emotional literacy. If those skills are not in place, learning becomes that much more difficult, right? So coping skills, social skills, self-regulation skills, all of those things are absolutely critical to being able to learn. So if we have children that are lacking these skills or are delayed in these skills, we are going to see negative impact on academic outcomes. So we can't put the cart before the horse and say we're going to focus only on English and math. Of course, English and math, they're important. That's why we're educating, right? But we have to shore up the foundation and make sure that foundation is as solid as possible as we try to educate and make sure that our students meet their academic potential. So in a bid to really get a consistent approach to teaching these skills, the Alex Panton Foundation, through work with Partnership for Children, first implemented or first put on the table the emotional literacy programs in 2019, right? So we're coming up on 5 years of working with emotional literacy programs. In 2019, we ran the first pilot program, and in 2020, following lockdown when we were returning to in-person school, the emotional literacy programs were included as part of the recovery program for COVID-19. So these programs were rolled out in all primary schools at that point. And I have to say we are so grateful for the support, not only from the Alex Panton Foundation, but from the Department of Education Services as well. I am very pleased to say the attitude to including social emotional learning with the curriculum, the understanding that these things are important, the support even from our director. This is something that was discussed at our most recent education opening. It's really nice to see the buy-in and the push that we're seeing from management, from principals, from educators. It's really, we're seeing a shift over time. We know change doesn't happen overnight, but being on the ground, I can tell you the change is happening, and not only with the adults, but with the students as well. So initially, the programs that were rolled out were Zippy's Friends, Apple's Friends, and the Zippy for SEND. Those first three, that's what we started with, right? So these are mental health promotion programs. Just as Mrs. Panton would have said, we're looking at improving social skills, coping skills, conflict resolution, all those, the self-regulation, all of those things that are needed to access education. All of these programs are also whole class programs. So there's nobody that's getting left out, especially at the primary level. I can say with certainty, every child in a government primary school has access to Zippy's Friends, Apple's Friends, or Passport. And our special school, Lighthouse School, they do have the Zippy for SEN program. So whole class programs, everybody's learning the same thing. There's a lot of overlap with the life skills curriculum as well. And these are all evidence-based programs. We don't want to be selecting programs willy-nilly, haphazardly, or something looks pretty on paper. No, we want to make sure that there's not only theoretical underpinnings, but there's evidence, there's research to support what we're doing. I think our students deserve to have access to quality programs and things that we know are effective, and this is exactly how APF, in partnership with the DES, this is how we have come to select our programs. So we're making sure that not only do they have access to the programs, but the programs are of high quality. So here we have just the covers for Zippy's Friends and Apple's Friends. You'll see the breakdown by year group included there. Reception, we don't offer Zippy's Friends in reception at this point. So it's year 1 and year 2. Apple's Friends, year 3 and year 4. Passport, year 5 and year 6. And then Zippy's Friends for SEN, that ranges from age 6 to 16. So again, the Lighthouse School, they have that in place and have had since the very beginning in 2019. Passport was added later on, maybe 2 years ago, is when we first introduced Passport. And I have to say, the reception has been quite good. I think teachers, it's really nice when we do the trainings and to see when teachers get into it, and teachers will say, oh, I'm learning coping skills as well. Nobody taught me these things. So they're learning, kids are learning, everybody's learning, which makes it fun as well. One of the more recent additions to the offering is the Spark Resilience Program. Now, this is aimed at ages 10 to 12. So you're looking at sort of the end of key stage 1, so maybe like year 5, year 6, and then you can look at year 7, year 8 as well. What's nice about these programs is that we have flexibility in terms of implementation with different age groups. But the Spark Resilience Program is exactly that. We're looking at building resilience. The program is based on positive psychology, cognitive behavioral methods, and mindfulness. There are 10 sessions, and there's a lot of focus on reinforcing character strengths. So if you look at the illustration there, you see a brain with sort of weights So that's the resilience gym section of the program. So it really focuses on what are the things that the child is good at, what do they feel are likable traits in terms of personalities, what supports do they have in their lives. You know, it could be a parent, a teacher, a pastor, anybody. And so what we're doing is always reinforcing these are the things that you can rely on. These are your, what we would call protective factors, right? But just reminding the children constantly about that. And then the cognitive behavioral side of it is helping children to identify habitual ways of thinking that may or may not be helpful. And then changing the thinking to be more logical and evidence-based rather than just responding based on feeling. So if you see the parrots there, that's just a sampling of the different parrots that are used. So each parrot represents a different style of habitual thinking, right? So we have the warrior, the optimist, the confident, and the loser. So what we will do is go through different examples, and we get to identify which parrot is speaking. Okay, are we going to trust the parrot? How much are we trusting the parrot? Okay, do we choose a different parrot maybe? Okay. So it really gives a nice framework to have children analyze their thinking and change that kind of thinking over time. And that's a skill, right? This is something even I'm still working on, just catching myself. Okay, stop. Just stop. There's no crisis happening. Relax. That was just me this morning, actually, when I was getting dressed. And this is how I always go over time because I like to tell stories. But, so I'm getting dressed this morning, and you see the dress I'm wearing. It has maybe 12, 15 buttons, right? And these buttons are held by the world's tiniest elastic loops. The amount of time it took me to button all 12 or 15 buttons, I was losing time. I started sweating. I said, these people are going to say, oh, yep, she's late. She's not serious. Here we go. And then I had to stop and say, all right, wait a minute. Is this a crisis? No. Am I going to discard the dress? Also no, because I have nothing else. So I'm just going to button the buttons, relax, and get on with it. So these are the times where we start to get stressed, and you really just have to stop yourself and say, all right, get it together, right? So these are the skills that we're trying to impart with our students. Now, in terms of data trends, again, we want to make sure that what we're doing is having an impact. We want to know that what we're doing is moving our children in the direction that we want to see. So the data from last year, so the research and the data that was done from last year, what we're seeing is the trends in the data. We've seen reduction, statistically significant or approaching significance, reduction in children being rated as often unhappy, downhearted, or tearful, reduction in children having many worries and often seeming worried, reduction in children being rated as nervous in front of groups and other children, and also reduction in children being fidgety or moving excessively. Now, when we think about those things, are all important for learning, right? We also see an increase in solving problems independently, speaking politely to teachers and other adults, and also accepting criticism. That last one is so important for learning. If you cannot accept feedback, good luck learning anything new. So I think this is very promising. I love to see that this is where we're going. Of course, change takes time, but to see that we are absolutely moving in the right direction is extremely encouraging. The most recent program now that we've put in place is Sunshine Circles. So Sunshine Circles is a TheraPlay-based program that's specific for classrooms. So this is structured, play-based therapy. It's adult-led, and it's really focused on nurture, building trust, while remaining playful. So the focus is being as experiential as possible. So whereas the other programs would involve a lot of talking and thinking about things and solving problems, this is more nonverbal. right? So we are starting at the very foundation of learning. It's play. That's how we know children learn, right? So we can see some pictures from some recent sessions. So there's a lot of focus on cooperation and trust between children and adults, and there's also cooperation and trust between children or among children. All of that is setting the base for safety, security, and then when that self-regulation is built, then those children will be more available for learning. So again, we see touch is important, play is important. Yes, there's structure, but there's no, correction, and you're not to do that. 3 rules: stick together, no hurts, have fun. That's it, right? Straightforward. They'll get it. They'll remind themselves. They'll remind each other. It's fantastic. We have groups from reception all the way through Key Stage 3 in high school. So that's years 7, 8, and 9. So this is something that can be used across age groups, which is also really helpful. We have the emotional literacy programs and sunshine circles as part of what we call our continuum of support in government schools. So we have different tiers of support depending on what children's needs are, and we can see that this is being used across several different layers of support. And I think this is probably one of the most important slides in all of this. APF's investment in these emotional literacy and now Sunshine Circles programs. There's been an investment of over $100,000 since the start in 2019. That's a massive investment, and we are extremely grateful for it because we can see the impact that it's already having. I can say with certainty, 100% of government primary schools have access to Zippy's Friends, Apple's Friends, and Passport. And now with the introduction of Sunshine Circles and Spark Resilience, our high schools have access to emotional literacy and other intervention programs as well. So every government school, primary and secondary, Cayman and Cayman Brac, every school has access to at least one program. So I would like to say a massive thank you to APF, to the donors. I think it's money very well invested, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how we expand our implementation of these programs and the impact that it will continue to have. If I name names, I'm going to get in trouble, but just thank you to everybody who contributes and the DES as well, because without the partnership, none of this would work. So thank you very much for your attention.